How's it going, guys? I'm Wes with Everboard Gaming, and today we are here to wish Carcassonne a happy birthday. So what I have on the table today is the 20th anniversary edition of Carcassonne. So obviously, 20 years old, good enough to get an anniversary edition. It's a classic game. But if you're unfamiliar with what Carcassonne is, if you've never heard of it, I'm going to start with an overview of what the game actually is, a quick review on the actual game, and then I'll go into what the anniversary edition actually adds to it, and if I think it's worth picking this up if you already have a previous version of Carcassonne. So at its core, Carcassonne is a fairly basic tile laying game, actually. On your turn, you are going to draw a tile, play that tile, and if you want, put a meeple on that tile. And that's your turn. You'll check for scoring conditions if they come up. But that's pretty much the basic game. You don't have a lot of options. That's actually what makes it a really good gateway game. It's actually been called one of the pillars of gateway gaming because it is so basic and it's a mechanic that if you can grasp this, it opens the gates to a lot of new games you can play based on, oh, you enjoyed the tiling aspect. Check out this game that has a tile laying component, but there's a lot more to it than that. I think of like Raja's the Ganges, where there is a tile laying component to it, but there's also a worker placement component to it as well. A lot of games that are bigger and, in my opinion, better games just because there's a lot more going on in them. This game is very simple, and so with new people, a lot of times they really like that. With experienced gamers, and in my opinion, in our experience, that can get a little redundant at times. The way you score points is based on how you put your meeples, and there's a couple different places to put your meeples on there. On the roads, like when you place it, if there's a road, you have to connect the roads. So you can't have like a road going into nothing. There are start and stops to the roads. There are buildings, and you build the buildings out as big as you can get them scoring points. There's also the little, like the monasteries that get you points. And really only the placement rules are that you have to connect the elements of the game in a congruent fashion. So again, the roads connect to the roads, the buildings connect to the buildings. You can't put like where a building should expand, just put a field up to it. You have to put a building there and get a close of that building. So it's really, again, really easy for newcomers to grasp that concept because it is really just building out a puzzle. And that's probably one of the things that people can get a little confused by, I guess, is that there's no like set board, that the board builds however the game takes it. You know, you could have a really narrow, long, short, long city. You could have like a really tall, skinny one. It could stay fairly congruent. You could have these big offshoots. And I think that's part of the fun of it, is to see how it grows, what comes up. I was playing this version just recently with some family that was in town, and we ended up with this one just massive city. And that's really cool because there's this massive scoring point. Massive point scoring city. Everyone's trying to see if they can get in on that city, to score in, cash in on some of those points. Well, Mike, my brother-in-law, who's in the city, he's trying to like keep everyone else out of it. So that is the fun that can be had in this game. And then there's some points that score mid-game. There's some points that score end of game. Basically, most of the points score when that element is complete. So like the cities, if you're in a city, the city scores once that city is like the walls completely surround it. On the roads, you score the roads when you get like one point to the other. There's endpoints of the road, whether into a city or into like a junction. So once a road has a start and end, then you'll go ahead and score whatever meeples on that road. The monasteries score when they're completely surrounded. And the field scores, like when you lay your farmer down in the field, that's an end of game score. So overall, my thoughts on Carcassonne are like, it's good. I enjoy it. I think it's a great teaching game. My family had a lot of fun playing it. And I think as far as like the style and the age it came in, fantastic. Compared to other games of that time, I think this one's really great. Now, as far as a modern game, again, I think it's fine to teach people, but there are just so many more games out there. And I do get there's a lot of expansions for Carcassonne, but realistically, it's just, again, to me, it feels dated. And I know Tom in particular can't stand this game. He gets so bored. And now, like, the caveat to that is that he doesn't care for tile laying games in general. Just that mechanic of, like, the core concept of the game is that you're drawing and laying tiles. That mechanic does not do it for him. He doesn't mind if there's tile laying in a game, but just flop tiles onto the board. And I totally get that critique. It's not as big a deal to me. But I do think that this game is definitely simpler than I want. I'll put it this way. You're teaching someone checkers, hopefully to one day play chess with them. Now you're going to put up with checkers and you may enjoy checkers. But realistically, checkers is not the game that you would like to sit down and play if you're going to play a game. You'd rather play chess. It's exactly how I feel about this game. Happy to play it, had a good time, kind of crushed them, but it's just not the game that I want to play. Now, that being said, as far as what the Anniversary Edition adds to this game, first off, it does add the river expansion. And now it's not the first game of Carcassonne to add the river into the base box. Actually, the Carcassonne that I had before this one actually came with a river as well. So, like, that was my first time playing Carcassonne, had the river. So that doesn't seem like that big of an expansion to me because it's what I'm used to. And it's really a take it or leave it expansion in my opinion. It just, like, when you start off, instead of just starting the game, you start playing the river tiles, which is one more element of things to connect. Like, you have to play the river, connecting to the river, and then it ends with the two starting and stopping points of the river. There's no additional point scoring, at least that I've seen. There may be expansions that add to that. It really just gives a foundation upon which to play the rest of the game. It gives you a nice spread out start. And for that, like, perfectly fine. No complaints at all. It just doesn't add that much to the game, in my opinion. So it's definitely not like a negative thought. I just don't, like, you want to play the river? Great. You want to play the river? Great. The next thing this adds is the Abbott Expansion, and I had not played with the Abbott Expansion before this edition, and I think it's honestly a really good add. I could see how if it's like a brand new gamer, it may be a little bit difficult to teach them the strategies to it. But once you played your first game of Carcassonne, you immediately see the benefits and why you would want them. And the Abbotts are these taller meeples. There's one for each color, so each person gets one Abbott. And basically how they play is on the monasteries. Typically, you put your meeple there and it's stuck there until that monastery is completely surrounded, and then you score your 9 points and you get it back. The difference is that in this game, if the abbot is what you placed on the monastery, you can recall it at any time during your turn if you don't play a meeple that turn. So you only score for the tiles that are around it. So if there's 4 tiles around it, you'll get those 4 points. So you're not, like, missing out on any points. There's some point potential that you're missing out on because, you know, if you do leave it there, there's, you know, you could potentially get the rest of those points from having it completely surrounded. But also if you're ever meeple locked where, you know, all your meeples are on the board and there's a big city that you want to try to get into and you're stuck, you don't have any meeples and no one is really, like, doing anything to release your meeples. You also have the flower beds on the board that score and play the exact same way as the monasteries, except for that you can only play the abbots there. You can't play any of your regular meeples. Overall, I think this is a great expansion to add. I think that it's very minor. Like, again, if I don't play with it, you're really not going to notice it because it's such a conditional thing to come up. Like, you have to play to one of those spaces for the points, and you have to have the abbot and play the abbot for it to be useful at all. And you could go an entire game where you are playing the abbot to those places, and you just never use the special ability because you never need to. So perfectly fine expansion. I enjoy it. I'll play with it. But it again, it doesn't add, like, it's nothing astronomical. And the last expansion that's added is just called the Anniversary Expansion. And I have some of the tiles right here. And there's a handful of new tiles in the game that have a symbol on the side of them. There's 3 new symbols added with these little arrows with meeples or tiles in it, something inside of it. And they play just like regular tiles, except for that if you play it and the arrow points to another tile, so like when you put it down, it is put down such that the arrow is pointing to an adjacent tile, then you have the option to trigger the ability on that tile. And there's some pretty cool ones. Like there's one that just gives you another turn. I think that's pretty damn good, in my opinion. The one that I think is most interesting lets you double up on your meeples. And the reason why that's super important, in my opinion, is on cities. So if somebody is taking a really big city, like you have a way to try to join in on that city by, you can never play a meeple into an element that already has a meeple on it. So you can't like build onto a city and add your meeple into that city. But if I have a city with a meeple in it and you have a city with a meeple in it and somehow we get those cities to join together, well, now we're both in that city. And if you can have more meeples in that city than I can, then you win that city from me. And this is a great way to get more meeples in that city, because to get more before, you would have to, again, have another city with your meeple in it and get that city to join in as well, making ultimate mega city. And the last tile lets you play a meeple onto a previously played tile that does not have any meeples on it. And that might let you jump onto a road that is unoccupied. It could potentially let you jump into a city. Like that's kind of wishy-washy. But realistically, it just lets you get more meeples on the board and potentially take advantage of a situation that did not previously present itself. This is definitely the biggest expansion, I think. It still doesn't it's not game-changing by any means. But it is a nice expansion to add, and it changes the most out of the expansions that are presented before you. And then last, of course, there is an art update. They put spot UV on a lot of the tiles in the game, which I thought was a really nice touch. Obviously, it comes with a beautiful new box. All of the meeples now have stickers that are kind of a pain in the ass to apply to the meeple. But once you have them all on there, I just took a night of watching Disney Plus and just stuck all the meeples. It took a while. It was, again, pain in the butt. But now that they're all on there, it definitely does add to like the fancy element of the game. And if you're buying this for like the anniversary aspect to it, then it's definitely a touch that I think that you're going to enjoy. So overall, I think that if you already own Carcassonne, this is definitely not something to like jump out of your seat to go get a hold of. If you love Carcassonne, you want to join in the celebration of 20 years of awesome tile placing goodness, absolutely go pick up a copy. If you've been looking for a copy of Carcassonne, I would definitely recommend this one over a non-anniversary edition, just because it is a little fancier. It does come with a few additional expansions right out of the box. And there's elements built into the game that work with other expansions. I know like the Robber expansion, which I haven't played before, but there are tiles in here that work with the Robber expansion, although for the Celebration edition, they are little guys like partying on the road. Cool, I guess. And it is compatible with previous versions of the expansion. So like the tiles just in a stack, you can't look at the back and say, oh, this is the anniversary tile. I know it's not from that expansion, so maybe I want to draw from this pile or whatever. If you're looking for a game of Carcassonne, I'd recommend the anniversary edition. If you want to join the celebration, then you don't need me to tell you that. Just go buy it. But if you just like, oh, Carcassonne's a cool game, do I need to upgrade to the new version? I really don't think so, but I'll let you make that decision. And if you do want to pick up a copy of this game, there will be an Amazon affiliate link down in the description below. And as long as you're clicking on links down in the description, make sure you click on Game Toppers as well. Biggest supporter of our channel right now. And we really appreciate their support. And we also appreciate getting these awesome table toppers to play on. Either way, guys, I hope you have a great day. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.